good and bad experiences, but good and bad in whose context is a matter for debate, because Spirit have very often said to us that it isn't at the time of death from this world is a time of celebration in the spirit world. So it really depends on where you're at and what you're looking at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I've done quite a lot of soul searching on it myself, because my daughter's autistic, and I had a chat with Robert earlier, and he mentioned that you've also got an autistic son or daughter.
It's my son's got Asperger's.
That's right. Yeah. So for myself, I've always tried to find a lesson, I guess, in the things that don't seem to be, the things that are challenging, if you like. But one of the things I've always come up against with other people that have gone down the extreme of that path is that they sort of lose the compassion. Like, I've had people that say to me, "Oh, it's her karma. She did something bad in a previous life, or this, that, and the other." And for me, I have to keep bringing myself back to the centre and think, yes, I understand it's a lesson, but I also try to keep hold of that compassion as well, and which is really difficult. So
it is really, really difficult, and sometimes people with autism can be very, very difficult to live with, and your spirituality at times is severely challenged. And it's so easy for other people to judge or to make these vast statements on karmic debt or whatever. But actually, we're human beings at the end of the day with human feelings. And we're aspiring to be better than we are in certain areas. And actually, sometimes, it can be very upsetting, very challenging. And other people's compassion is questionable when they're not actually going through it. So I think we must not lose sight of the fact that we are on the earth plane as human beings, and it is very difficult to see the bigger picture at times. And we do have massive questions about why does this happen? What is it? Sometimes you might say, what is it that I've done wrong that I have to deal with these particular things? It isn't a case of that, but we wouldn't be reasonable people if we didn't at some point question just what on earth's going on here. I try to be a good person, I try to do the right thing, blah, 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 and still I'm challenged in this way. But the only way that I've really come to terms with all of these things is to ask or say to myself, well, why not me? Why not me? Why shouldn't I have to deal with these things? Because at some level, the aspect of my soul that's incarnated may well have chosen to experience these things for my involvement. So I think it's a case of not beating yourself up too much on with some of these things that can be extremely challenging at times.
No, I agree. I mean, for me, it's been a wonderful experience, really, in the end, because I was just amazed by their abilities and what they can do, the way they think so differently.
Absolutely.
And I think what could be
itself is such a breath of fresh air, because I mean, my son at time when he was 12 or 13, I hadn't got a clue what I was going to do with him. I mean, he used to thump me in the street and all sorts of things.
I know the feeling.
It cost such a lot of money to get a diagnosis, and I didn't get that for its own sake. I got it because I thought I was going mad, basically, and nobody was listening. And you know what? I look at him now at 20, and he's a wonderful musician. And I sometimes have to stop myself and think, if I thought about life in the way that you do occasionally, a little bit more often, maybe things wouldn't be quite so heavy as they sometimes can be.
Yeah, that's right.
Like a fellow once said, Ian, I don't know what the question was, but we were talking about blindness, and he said, how do you know that the blind man doesn't see a lot more than you do?
Exactly, yeah, with the other senses.
Isn't it?
Yeah, well, I got caught in a rainstorm a while back, and I was absolutely drenched. I had no umbrella, and then I just suddenly had a vision of what my daughter would do, and she loves water. chops. So she, you know, when she's out in the rain, she's just staring up at the sky, spinning around. It's all coming down her face. She's licking it off her chops and everything, and she's just in awe of the rain, like it's all sparkly. So I just thought, I'm going to pretend I'm her. And I didn't obviously do all the hand movements and everything, but I just had this amazing sunny kind of smile in my mind of what she would do, and she found the joy in something that we would think was just so mundane and awful. You know, it's raining.
Really, isn't that what spirituality is about? It's about looking at the same mundane things with fresh eyes. Yeah,
exactly.
You know, trying to find a meaning to something, and actually, it's not, as we know, it really isn't out there beyond ourselves. It's within ourselves always, and it's really about the perception of how we see the world, and that truly is the most important thing. I read a fantastic book, and I would recommend this to anybody, and it's a book by Viktor E. Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning, and he's a psychiatrist who went through the concentration camps through the Second World War. And the first part of the book describes his experiences, which you couldn't imagine anybody ever coming through that, let alone coming through it and finding some peace from it. I was absolutely astounded by this man's approach to the suffering that he had, and the way that he used those experiences to help other people after the war. And you know, even if it is standing in the rain and thinking about the rain in a different way, it's as profound, if you like, as somebody who's perhaps gone through this guy's amount of suffering and come out the other end, that we have to, through our, by thinking about things differently, come to an understanding that is different. Although, you know, essentially nothing has changed. Nature doesn't mind if it rains, if it's sunny, if it's windy. It just bends and changes to whichever circumstances it's in, and maybe that's a lesson for us all in that.
Yeah, it's a little bit like coming enlightened, isn't it, really, finding the joy and peace in everything, and getting away from all the distractions and attachments that we all do, don't we? So
absolutely.
I mean, there's a brilliant programme that's been on, it's still on actually on BBC Two, which is called The Big Silence. And it's made had an effect on us, really, because it says actually that we try to fill every moment with something. And the power of just being silent and taking in the joys of nature doesn't cost us anything at all, but can actually make such a difference to the way we think and the way that perhaps we might make decisions in the future. And if there's anything that we could do just to embrace that a little in our own very busy lives, I think it would perhaps be a good thing for everybody.
Indeed, yeah. So how do you see the future sort of unfolding, or how does White Feather at least see the future unfolding? Is it a pretty picture? I mean, do we have nothing to really worry about, do you think?
I'd like to say that it was a case, Ian, but I can't. He does say that you know, there's some darker times ahead in the short term, short to medium term, because of the current trends that are, you know, unfolding. But ultimately, you know, that truth will win through, because his main message is that light is greater than darkness, and truth is greater than ignorance. And if you believe that, and I've no reason to doubt that, then, you know, the future's got to be bright, really. It's got to be good. But I think in the short term, because of what's going on, I think there's a lot of ignorant minds on this earth and around this earth, and I think they're intent on having their day. And I mean, people are waking up. As I said earlier, there is a paradigm shift, but whether that's going to be quick enough to prevent some nastier things occurring, you know, personally, I've got my doubts. But I think ultimately, you know, man was created by a greater force, a greater energy, a greater consciousness that will not be defeated by any ignorance, will not be thwarted, and that ultimately, that, you know, the light and the truth will prevail. I really believe that.
And I really think that people want to know, that they really want to feel that there is something else beyond all the doom and gloom. And yes, we will have these things that will happen